In the morning when I rise, give me Jesus.
Good morning. Well, we've been talking about how Paul encourages us to live a life holding others up as more important even than ourselves, that we would not live out of selfish interest, but rather be concerned about the interest of others. And that we would do this just like Jesus did with his attitude of humility. He came as God, but he gave up being God so that he would be in the form of a man to be able to obey God and pay the price for all of our sin, that he might be our sacrifice in the atonement of our sin. Well, we have come to a verse that I have heard so many times taught erroneously. It's taught in a way that does not hold the context of what we just talked about. As we come to Philippians 2 verse 12, it says this, "So then, my beloved, just as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now even much more in my absence." Oh, I'm asking you to live this life of humility even as I'm gone now. In fact, even as I am locked up in prison now, I'm living a life of humility, and I want you to follow just like I am. And here's what it says: walk out your salvation with fear and trembling. And I've heard this taught in terms of your Christian walk is a work that you need to do, afraid that you might even lose your salvation. Oh, work out your salvation in fear and trembling. You better be good, and you better be good enough, or you're going to lose your salvation. You better be afraid. And so you live a life with every step concerned that you're doing it good enough. Well, that's not at all what this verse says. And so please, please, please listen to me carefully. When Paul said, work out your salvation in fear and trembling, if you'll look at the Greek, here's what Paul was saying. Walk out your salvation. Even in humility, if we take it in context, just like I've been talking about humility, oh, walk out in the attitude that Jesus had, an attitude of humility. And then it says, in fear and trembling, Paul's saying, if you look at the Greek, in awe of God, in fear of God, in reverence to God, because Jesus came in your place. See, he just talked about that. So be in awe of the fact that all your sin has been taken away, and trembling. That word, if you look it up in the Greek, means with no confidence in your own ability. And so what Paul was saying, walk a walk of humility, surrender to God that he might live his life through you. Be in awe of him, surrender to him with no confidence in yourself, but great confidence in him living his life through you. Well, I've heard this taught in a way that you could lose your salvation, and I just want to tell you right now, you can't. Are you saved? If you're saved, then you're saved. I'll just give us 3 quick verses, and there are so many that I can point to. But go to Hebrews 12, verse 2 says this, "Fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and the finisher of your faith." See, your faith is not even dependent on you. Jesus is the author of your faith, and he'll finish it in you. Galatians 2:20, the second part of that verse says, "The life I live in this body, I live by the faith of Jesus Christ, who loved me and gave himself for me." See, it's his faith that we live by. He's the author and the finisher of our faith. Do you think the faith of Jesus is going to waver? No, it's his faith in you. Turn to Jude. Verse 24 says this, "Now to him who is able to keep you from stumbling and to make you stand in the presence of his glory, blameless, with great joy." Oh, he's the one that does it, and he is able. I want to give you one more. Back up to John chapter 5, and verse 24 says this. This is Jesus talking. "Truly, truly, I say to you," oh, how I really want you to hear this, "he who hears my word and believes him who sent me," that's you and me, believing believers, "you have eternal life." Oh, and eternal life is eternal. and you do not come into judgment, and you have passed from death into life. Now, you're not going to go from life into death and then from death into life again. No, you have already passed from death into life. You're alive, and He's able to keep you. He is the author and the finisher of your faith. And eternal life is eternal. Well, that makes perfect sense if you take this in context and look now at verse 13. Verse 12 says, walk out your salvation in humility, with no confidence in yourself, being awe of this God who's living His life through you, who trusts you enough to live His life through you. Now that is awe-inspiring. And if we look at the next verse, it makes perfect sense. Verse 13 says this, for it is God who is at work in you, both to will and to work for His own good pleasure. Oh, we've got to see it. It's not up to you and your efforts in any way. You just believe. Do you believe? Are you a believing believer? If so, then rest. Eternal life is eternal. All right, so can you lose your salvation? Or is it once saved, always saved? Well, I want to give you one more perspective. That's the wrong question. Don't say yes to the Lord to avoid hell so that you can live in fear of whether or not you're going to make it or not. No, you say yes to the Lord so you can experience His kingdom here and now. Then the real question is not, is it once saved, always saved? The real question is, are you walking with Him now? Do you have a sense of His kingdom in the here and now? Because that's real Christianity. Oh, that's where we need to go when we read Philippians 12 and 13. We need to see that they go together along with the conversation about humility. Let Jesus live His life through you. Be humble. Let go. Surrender so that He can live a life of humility through you. He's the one that does it. To will for that and to actually do it for His own good pleasure. Yeah, get a hold of that. And we'll take it the next step as we get together tomorrow. God bless you.
Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world.